Good evening, everybody.
Here,
Welcome
John.
to the regular meeting of the Tinley Park Zoning Board of Appeals. We're going to start off, if you wouldn't mind, by standing, removing your hats. We'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Miss Barbara, would you like to do the roll?
Haschak,
Here.
Vargas, Fritz, Bettenhausen,
Here.
Gaskell,
Here.
Shuck, Chairman Suppasi.
He is here. Okay, thank you very much. Now if I can find my notes and stuff here, what I just put down. It's gonna be that kind of a night. Okay, everybody, we have, before I begin, because I always forget to do this, we have two hearings scheduled tonight, and I have here the newspaper confirmation of notice of hearing presented, so we know we made the papers and all of that. Our next thing would be the minutes of the last time we were together, the meeting. I just need a what's that?
March 14th.
March 14th, yeah, it was a long time ago. I just need a motion to approve said minutes.
Make motion.
Second.
Okay. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the minutes of the March 14th meeting. Everybody in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The minutes have been approved. Okay. All right. Let's see. All right, well, we're going to open our first public hearing for the night, and this is the public hearing from Mr. Lopez at 17104 South 67th Court. It's an accessory structure playhouse setback variation. Is everybody ready to proceed with that? Okay, well, then I'll entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Let's see. Dan, are we going to start with you?
Yeah, you can start with me and then go to the petitioner and swear him in
Okay,
afterwards. So,
you're up.
yeah, so this is a variation. It's to permit a 96 square foot accessory structure that's being used as a playhouse to be located in the secondary front yard where accessory structures are not typically permitted. So, quick background on the property is it's a 6,650 square foot lot, so 133 feet deep, 50 feet wide. It's a corner lot, so that's pretty tiny for a corner lot. The home's in Breithbarth subdivision, which is one of the oldest subdivisions in the village, was part of the original annexation of the village, but then it was subdivided afterwards around 1920. The house was constructed around 1925 that we're talking about today, so relatively old. Most of the new subdivisions that come in today not only have actual setbacks from the corner, unlike this property had, but also has kind of additional width to the lot. So that way, because you kind of function as having two front yards on a corner lot, that allows them to still kind of have the same amount of space that they can use for their backyard for the rest of the lots. So that's kind of what we do now. But going back to 1925, they hit a little bit different picture. Most of these homes too were built without garages, so most of them had garages built after the fact that were either small. A lot of them either didn't have garages or they were pretty small one-car garages for the time. So also to note, the fence code was revised in 2017. One of the big discussion points about that code was non-conforming setbacks, such as the property that we're going to talk about. So, if a home's built into a setback because it's older and it's legal non-conforming, so it was legally permitted, met the codes at the time it was constructed, and then the codes changed later, that basically with that fence requirement, they said, you can get administrative approval to put a fence in a secondary front yard that's in line with the setback of the house, provided that basically there's no visual problems, no safety problems, no sightline problems that would happen from neighbors that maybe couldn't see the road or it could block visibility at a corner. So that was one of the big changes they made in that code update to give a little more flexibility to people that have these non-conforming setbacks, particularly in these older subdivisions. So the zoning of the properties are R4 zoning, which is our single-family residential zoning. To the north, south, east are all the same R4 zoning. Breithbar subdivisions on the south side of 171st, and then you have Parkside to the north of it. To the west of this is our neighborhood flex district that's in our legacy district. Directly to the west of this is a tax attorney that's kind of in what looks like a single-family type home. It's all brick, and they have a small parking area just to the west of this property. And then kind of diagonal northwest of this property is the 7-Eleven convenience store on 171st and Oak Park Avenue. So the variation request, again, it's one request, a variation just to allow this in what's a required secondary front yard. The petitioner has already constructed it, so it's a 96 square foot playhouse. It's 8 foot by 12 foot, I believe, and 11.5 inches tall, so taller than your normal play structure, but the size and then the height are permitted for an accessory structure. So the main thing we're looking at is the location of this.
Can I ask a question, Dan?
Sure.
I'm looking at this overhead view, camera, satellite view or whatever.
Yeah.
What are those green lines?
The green lines are property lines. They're not guaranteed to be accurate, though, to the aerial, but they're a good estimate of kind
Okay.
of where the property lines are. But a lot of times it is a foot or two off, just because you're taking technical lines and laying it over an aerial. It doesn't always work out perfect, but
Because I'm looking at this thing and if they're even close to accurate, the house is built on the setback.
It's not. It's just because you get the angle on the aerial too. So
I
every
don't know, it
aerial
looks like it's pretty well directly overhead.
Oh, it's on the roof.
Yeah, if you look at a survey is a better, if you look at an actual
Yeah,
platted
you see the
survey,
plat here?
that's I have it up on the screen now,
Yeah.
so that's a legal document that kind of shows what all the setbacks are, where they go out there and actually measure all the property lines, so I always say it's a good estimate, but they're not at all accurate.
Well, I understand that. But it's just, okay.
Yeah, but the house is really close, so it's about 2 feet from the property line, and that's where you can't really tell on these aerials, that when it gets that close, you just can't tell. So, but according to the survey, it's about 2 feet away.
Well, it's a lot closer than the garage or the playhouse.
Correct, yeah. So it's placing this in what's a required front yard, not what kind of functions. There's two different ones. So the R4 typically requires a 25-foot setback, so obviously they're 23 feet away from that, just because, again, it was constructed before those kind of zoning codes went into effect. And the playhouse was constructed in 2017, constructed without a permit. So our inspectors did catch it, made them come in for a permit. There are double permit fees that are kind of the requirement of anyone that does work without permits in the village. So basically, upon review of it, though, we found that it's in the secondary front yard. Since it's constructed, the petitioner basically decided to come forward between you guys, see if he can get a variation before, we pursue any kind of code enforcement action or before any fines. So he's here before you guys to kind of see if it can remain where it's at and at the size. I will say, though, that in a variation process, kind of the existing nature, the fact that it's built can't really come into play legally in terms of how you guys are looking at the standards for a variation. So those are kind of your guide as to, is this illegal? Does it make sense for him to get? You kind of got to look at it as if it wasn't built. It's there, but that doesn't really come into play again for the request. So here's the picture of the existing playhouse. So looks it's good quality, kind of the same materials you see in a lot of the existing single-family homes. A lot bigger again than your normal playhouse. So if the permit is approved, if the variation is approved and he gets the building permit, we do still need to inspect it and kind of do a building code review of it. I don't exactly know what the building codes are for a playhouse though, but our building inspector does, so he'll go out there, inspect it, make sure all the connections are safe. Hopefully he can get in there or find a way to look at all the connections. So he feels confident that I think he did kind of an initial review of it. He thought it looked good, but he'll double check to make sure everything's built correctly out there at that time. Here's kind of just a, sorry, go ahead. Oh, did
I
you-
say, what was in that spot originally?
So it was a garage. So yeah, I think it was 2002-ish or something when.
No, when I bought the house, so that would be 2008, so 2007, a tree came over and fell on the old existing garage, because it used to face out towards 171st
Right.
before, and then a tree fell on it, and then, with my knowledge, when I bought the house, the Bachman, from Bachman, didn't tell me that he sold some of the easement to you guys, so then, then that's how I lose all that side, and I didn't know nothing about, like, the garage was zoned over there or nothing. Cause that's when I originally came in now, that's what me not getting my permit was all about, is I came in here, and they still never had said the garage wasn't zoned or the fence. There was no permits ever pulled on it. So
Yeah.
that's where I went with a lady that was working in here. I put a tarp on it, got it through the window, the winter and stuff, cause they told me to stop. So I'm like, okay, and I was working with a lady from here, and then, she called, do 2 meetings, next day called both times, canceled it. I'm like, okay. 6 months went on, and on the weekends, I'm like, I gotta get this thing built or put a roof on it until I can figure out what Tinley's doing. And then by that time, I got a ticket, and then I showed up to court, and it dismissed, cause my wife was working, giving the pictures and.
For the new garage you're talking?
No, for the old one.
Okay.
For the playhouse.
I have to
Oh, oh, oh,
interrupt
oh.
for a second.
Yeah.
All you gentlemen are sitting out there, we have to stand up and have you sworn that
Oh,
you're gonna
okay,
give
sorry.
testimony here. Sir, are you in the back, are you gonna be speaking tonight? No? Okay. If you two gentlemen would just raise your right hand. I solemnly swear that the testimony I'm about to give this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God. I do?
I do.
Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry, I forgot about that.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'll stand up here then. No, but, yeah, the existing garage, none of that, because they had no, I guess, permit pulled on it, so that was the whole delay on it from 2017. It sat almost a whole year with just a tarp on it. I'm like, all right, and I was trying to figure out from the lady, but she's no longer here, so I tried to go for a permit, and then they, rejected my permit. So they're like, you need to get a variance on the property, and I'm like, well, I mean, all the zoning, because I don't get how it's 2 front yards. I barely even have.
Well, yeah.
Every person owns a
that-
corner
that's-
lot in this town says the same.
I
They
know,
do.
but I mean, I'm just trying to keep my daughter safe. I mean, for residential area, I'm on one of the busiest corners. I'm just trying to keep my daughter in the backyard. That's all I'm trying to do.
Yeah, so it was a garage at one point. I think before, he said like 2008
Okay.
is where it was. I have pictures that, there's 2 other corners that had kind of that same situation. And when they rebuilt the garage, basically it wasn't allowed to be reconstructed there for the same reason why this playhouse isn't allowed to be there, is you couldn't, once something's destroyed, you basically have to meet the code. I think at that time, they also thought, everyone kind of thought, well, it's a lot better for that to come off 68th Court and not that close to the corner of 171st and Oak Park Avenue, where it's a little bit busier there. 171st is busier going west, and it kind of dies out here in the subdivision, so sometimes you get people speeding a little bit. So I think everyone's thought is, one, it meets the code, two, it's a better situation for them to rebuild it further south and then run the driveway off of 68th. So it was a garage there, and the playhouse is in the same
It's in the same
location.
footprint.
Yeah, in the same location. It's a better situation too than having the garage there.
You know, with a lot this size, I mean, you know, a 25-foot setback obviously is impossible.
Yeah.
I
And
mean, his existing garage is already on both sides of his lot within, you know.
Yeah.
So you know, I can't see how he could how anything else could be done.
Yeah, and that's so, on
mean,
these
maybe-
tight lots, it's pretty tough, especially when they're older like this, and you're trying to apply a current code. There are weird situations like this. So he has, it is located still behind the house, so kind of how you see a typical corner lot. Obviously, this one's not as big. The goal is to kind of have it tucked back behind the house, so it's not floating out in that area.
What does that?
That could be somebody's front yard. What's that? So, well, here's a existing picture of it. So it is within a fenced area that they could fence there legally, or do have it fenced legally. So it's behind that. It obviously sticks up a little bit because it's taller than the fence, but, again, the height's okay. I think that's kind of one of the big keys, is that it's back behind the building and that it's also within an area that can be legally fenced. So while it is technically a secondary front yard, it obviously doesn't function that way. We've had our kind of engineering, public works, and we've gone out there. There's not too much visibility issues here because the property to the west has parking there. It kind of functions as a pull-in, back-out parking lot. So there's not too many visibility concerns there.
Can I ask another question just for clarification? When you said that because the garage was damaged and actually destroyed, they couldn't build it in the same place because of the setback?
Correct. They would have to get a variation for it.
What would happen if the same thing with the house?
They would have to get a variant. So it's basically legal non-conforming, which means it doesn't meet the current zoning codes, but
So they would
it's
have
allowed
to-
to exist forever. If it gets destroyed beyond 50%, or they want to rebuild it, if they wanted to rebuild it exactly how it is, they'd have to come get a variance, and probably would on this lot. But when you're talking about tight lots like this, there's not too many alternatives you have. You can't just find
Exactly.
You
Exactly.
can't just gain property on it. So a lot of them are, you know, how far can you get it away from the corner, kind of making it a better situation, but there would probably be variances involved in that as well.
Okay.
So,
Is that it
Here's
for
a-
you, Dan?
what's that?
Is that it for you?
I got a little bit more, so
Okay.
here's just, I guess, another picture looking toward Oak Park Avenue on 171st. So the fence running basically with the house line, and then the playhouse is set another 6.5 feet in from that. So it is still 8.5 feet from the property line if you include the property on the other side of the fence, and then it's set back in from the fence into the lot. I already said all that. Here's kind of a picture. If you look on the top right, this is east of the property. But if you look on the top right, that is the petitioner's property up there. This is, again, the property just to the east across 68th Avenue. So they kind of have what he had over there in a mirrored fashion with the garage going on to 171st. Still exists that way now. So if that garage wants to be replaced, they'd either have to move it and kind of do what he did and have it come off 68th, or they'd have to get a variance. But it-
67th, you mean?
Sorry, 67th. Yes, 67th court. So they could they could move it over to that side. I'm not sure, obviously a different situation, but an example that, you know, it's kind of the nature of this neighborhood is they have closer structures. Here's just to the north on the other side of 171st too, and so they have that garage as well. So some of these lots were small, and I do believe at some point they took additional right-of-way just to get the sidewalks in there. So there could be sidewalks, because originally there wasn't out this way. So I don't know when that was. It goes pretty far back, but that even reduced these lot widths even further. So I think that's it for our staff report. It doesn't really meet your kind of typical standards for a variance. You don't have to have a playhouse per se. You don't have to have a second accessory structure, where I would say a garage, you do kind of have to have a garage for you to be able to market your property and have normal value. A playhouse doesn't really fit that mold. However, kind of having, if you're gonna have a second one and allow it, this is kind of in a reasonable location that doesn't affect too much. So,
I mean, it's done just like the house. It looks
Yeah.
like, just
Very
like the
static.
house.
Yeah. Mr. Lopez?
Yes.
Would you like to address us with anything?
Can I ask Dan a question?
You can.
Variance will run with the land, correct? So it's there, it stays, you can sell it, everything's good.
correct. It gets knocked down, they can put it back up. So, yeah, it runs with the land. It'd have to be built the way they presented it here. So they couldn't change it, they can't enlarge it, they can't make it taller even. Basically, if you approve it, you're approving it as it is. So, we do have recommended conditions too on it that, I don't think he has electric in it right now.
No.
Technically, you could run electric to accessory structures, like your garage has electric. But, and we're still allowing that, but whether it's solar or run through ComEd lines, he could have electric, but that it wouldn't be allowed to have water, sewer, gas, or cable. That's a requirement in our code, but we've just kind of rehashed it out as a condition of this approval, just to make sure it's clear. Same with that, it basically can't be used as living space, so you can't rent it out on Airbnb. It's obviously a little small for that, but
No, it's about the size of some of those on television.
maybe someone could fit their, something in there, stick their kids out there. So it just can't be used as living space. Again, another requirement of our code, and just clarifying it as a condition.
Okay. Dan?
Yeah, and I've even left the wall open, just waiting so we get this done. So if someone wanted to come out, and you can see it's built better than my house inside of there, you know, and I'm not trying to make it look ugly. I try to make it match my house as best I could, you know, so no one, and all my neighbors, you know, they all just gave compliments, and I said, you know, I just couldn't figure out why I had so much going on with the village trying to get it to go, because I never had a stop. The guy just came out and said, hold on, guys, go drink on Memorial Day. He's like, go have a drink, you know, then come to the office on Monday, and that's what I did. And then when I went for the permit, they're like, you need a variance on it. I'm like, well, I'm halfway built already. And then that's when I started dealing with a lady from the office, and it's just been dragging on. I wanted to just see what we could do about it, you know, because it's not hurting nobody. It's actually helping me blocking the red light on the intersection, and the guys, because he is a business right there behind me. I'm just stopping from people seeing over, that's it. Well, that's all I have to say, thanks.
It's an interesting structure. It's probably a cottage industry for you.
That's a grandma going crazy for her only granddaughter. That's what it turned into.
Mr. Leonard tore down the garage on his property to the west, correct? He had an old garage on there at some point, I believe.
An old one car there, I think, yeah.
The car went.
And he made the parking lot,
Yeah, correct. You're talking about the
the Leonard
tax
property.
attorney.
yeah.
Yeah, there was because that was an old house, so there was a garage on that property, and I believe it got torn down at some point, and they just did, it's used as a business property, so a parking lot made more sense at that point.
Okay, well, gentlemen, do you guys have any other questions or
I do.
anything, or comments at the moment?
Is it a concern of the village that this could set a precedent? We could have all these little lots over there in Parkside with all these accessory structures and taking up the whole backyard?
Yeah,
The Parkside isn't involved.
Parkside, you don't have to worry about, because people are putting houses up the size of the entire lot anyway.
Yeah, I mean, so it, again, this is a pretty unique
Yeah.
situation in terms of it being a corner lot, being really small, it being behind a fenced area, so I don't think it's I mean, it only applies to kind of those situations. And then you always have the review of, is it safe, does it look good? I mean, all those, the aesthetic effects are part of your guys' review too. Does it fit with the neighborhood appearance? So if there's something that's way out of place, it would still have to come here, and I think all those things would be reviewed. So I'm not too worried about any type of negative precedent with this one.
I have two questions, comments. The space between the garage and the playhouse is 8 foot. I thought fire regulations specified 10 feet. So are we encroaching on the,
No, so that's actually only from the principal structure. So since they're two accessory structures, it actually meets our zoning code as well as our building code. It's when you get closer than 10 feet to the principal structure that comes into play.
But it does have a firewall, because that's what the inspector had. I put a firewall all inside the playhouse on this side by the garage. Because he explained to me, you got gas cans, you got stuff in there. So I made sure I put all fire rated, everything on this side.
Yeah, so that's good. It's typically preferred when people do that, because you could have a kid in there. It's not required, but I think our building inspector went out there and had them take some extra precautions with it, so.
the second question I had is, if you look under the existing site and history provided by staff, it's page 2 of 9. The last sentence, however, the resulting fenced-in front yard area is still not permitted to have any permanent accessory structures placed within it. Does that mean that this, even if this is approved, would have to go? Is this,
No, that's what's being requested. So that was kind of, it allowed people to fence up to their non-conforming house setback, but the code still doesn't allow you to put permanent structures in there. So that's why he's here today, is because even though it can be fenced in, it still doesn't allow these permanent accessory structures. So that's kind of that's the variance or the request he's making today.
Dan, is he still making all the density requirements for the buildings on the lot?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a pretty lenient, like, lot coverage requirement that's still met.
Just making sure, yeah. So otherwise, build the variance in with that right now.
Yep, it meets it.
Okay, you guys all set? Anything from the petitioner or the audience before we close the
How many
hearing?
children do you have?
4,
What ages?
16, 13, 10, and 4.
So when that 4-year-old gets old, is this gonna be the man cave then? Is that,
No, it'll probably, it's a movable structure, so it'll probably go to my mom's farmhouse, and after that, go in her backyard, you know?
okay. Just wondering.
Or if the person, because we're actually now, because I'm concerned now, because you're saying with the variance of the property, and like if something happened, 50% of it was damaged. I mean, how it's zoned, it would pretty much say wipe it out. But
Yeah.
how about now, if I have an issue, because I was going through some right now in architect, I was gonna build up on my house. Is that affected too now? I won't even be.
You would have to, yeah, you'd have to get a variance. If you're expanding upon the structure and it's within the non-conforming setback, it'd be a variance. And there's a lot in these older subdivisions that are non-conforming. Much like this, they're gonna look at, does it look good and does it fit in? But it would be a variance.
See you guys again.
They put a second story on his house?
Yeah, no, on my actual house, yes.
That's what I mean.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's not just if you're expanding it width-wise, but if you're expanding up to, if you're changing any non-conformity, at that point, you'd have to get a variance. So,
Even though it's already there, yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's allowed to exist the way it is, but yeah, you can't expand upon it without the variance. Because if there was some kind of, visual problem, you want to make sure if you're doing something like this, it actually fits architecturally, visually into the neighborhood, so. And that's, it's been in all the towns I've worked for, same thing. It's a little harder in these Tinley goes back, it's a pretty old town, so you have a lot of these things that were built either without a zoning code or under the county that just don't quite fit in with the way most towns do zoning, and most suburban towns do zoning. So it's how close can you get to that?
Thank you.
All right. I think we've completed all this portion, so may I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Move.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor of closing the hearing, signify
Aye.
so by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. All right, so now we can deliberate this if you guys want to, and then we'll talk about it. We'll come to a vote and
Well,
we'll see.
reading it, I have nothing to say. I mean, I have no,
I think, myself, I think, okay, not having the permit wasn't the best thing in the world, but I think
Right.
the best effort's been made to build a safe, aesthetic-looking structure
Right.
here. It might be a good place for you to have to hide if things are a problem at home. You and the dog can be out there in the house, but I personally have no concerns about it. What about you, Bob?
No, we're good.
No? Fine.
Quality looking structure. I'm
absolutely.
very
Looks
impressed.
better than my first house, actually. Probably almost as big as my first house, truthfully.
And that's a difficult lot in difficult neighborhood.
Yeah, it is.
That's what I mean.
It's a
You want to make
tough
these
old
properties
neighborhood.
still sellable and available to people.
Well, all right then, why don't we go ahead and have somebody make a motion based on the printed material here? Is it in here?
Somewhere, I saw
Okay,
it.
I want to make, can I do that?
You want me to
You
go through
certainly
the
can.
Okay.
standards first? I can do it.
Yeah, you
quick
wanna go
review.
through all that? Sure, that's okay.
Uh,
Oh, there they are.
So the first standard is that the property can't yield a reasonable return if basically only allowed to meet the regulations as they are set today and the code as they are today. It's kind of the hardest one to meet ever, is that, what does a reasonable return mean? So the property can probably yield a reasonable return. If it meets all the code requirements today, a playhouse isn't necessarily a required structure. However, kind of going into the second one is that the plight of the owner is due to unique circumstances. Again, this is an old property with a non-conforming setback that's really non-conforming with only a 2-foot setback when 25 feet is typically required. So there's no other kind of existing alternative areas on the property to have a second detached structure that would meet the current code requirements. So while there's no kind of unique physical property traits, oh, sorry, I'm reading off the wrong one. So again, yeah, the property is before kind of the modern zoning code setback standards. Also, if the variation's granted, it won't alter the essential character of the locality, which is basically this fits in with the current neighborhood's development patterns, the current setbacks for corner lot accessory structures like this. It kind of betters the previous situation with a garage, even though it's still technically in a secondary front yard. And again, while a second accessory structure is not necessarily required, it does increase kind of the usefulness and attractiveness of the property in general. So there's a couple other standards that you can consider, and I guess the kind of one alternative one is the one other consideration is that the alleged difficulty is not a hardship of the owner of the property. This is a situation where they did create the current kind of hardship with it existing, but again, if you're gonna look at this without, basically if it wasn't up today, is consider it as if it wasn't built today, would this still be okay in that situation? That's it.
It's real hard for me to consider that a secondary front yard
It
with the
is.
way that house is built there.
Yeah, well, it's a
mean, it
required
technically is.
secondary, it doesn't function as their secondary front yard, because there is none there.
Yeah. I don't think you
That's
wanna
what makes
promote
It's
it
about
unique.
2 foot wide and runs along the fence,
Yeah.
yeah.
uniqueness.
But you
is-
can't
that's
really
reason-
write a zoning code for every single
Absolutely.
subdivision
Absolutely.
that's old, so R4 is actually our loosest kind of subdivision so that's why that's applied there. It's applied to most, applied to Parkside and most of the other kind of older areas around Tinley. They don't all apply, but it's how, can you try to get it to apply, and how close to that can you get? And then if you can't, get a variance.
Okay. So are we ready for a motion then, everybody?
Okay.
You want to continue,
Yes.
Jimmy?
I make a motion to recommend to the village board grant a variation to petitioners Sandra and Dan Lopez from section 3H, permitted encroachments on required yards of the zoning ordinance, to permit the accessory structure, a playhouse, to be located in a secondary front yard where it is not permitted at 170-104 67th Court in the R4 single-family residence zoning district, consistent with the list of submitted plans as attached herein, and adopt findings of fact as proposed by village staff, and as may be amended by the Zoning Board of Appeals at this meeting, with the following conditions. The accessory structure must maintain the proposed setbacks and minimize, and his size as presented with variation, and may not be moved or expanded upon. And no utilities, water, sewer, gas, cable, etc., other than electricity are permitted in an accessory structure. The accessory structure shall not be used for any business activity or living space.
Okay, now does anybody have any other conditions to add to that?
None.
None? Okay, is there a second on the motion?
Second.
Okay. Would you like to do a roll call, Barbara?
Paschak,
Yes.
Bettenhausen,
Yes.
Gaskell,
Yes.
Chairman Suppasi.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. The motion has passed, so you have received what we call preliminary approval for your variation. Now you need to go to the village board. Dan, what will that date be?
May 21st.
You have a May 21st meeting with the village board. It's on Tuesday night. And they may have questions for you. They'll receive our stuff. They'll look upon it and act upon it. And then you go from there.
So it's just one meeting with the unanimous approval. It's just one village board meeting. So it'll be kind of decided on the 21st. They don't typically have questions for you, but we recommend someone be there just in case.
No, I think I have the police station where I got ticketed this last one, so I don't have to show up to this one then, to that one?
I can confirm that. What day is it?
I think it's next, Thursday.
Tuesday, probably Tuesday, or the 14th, I think.
Yes.
Probably not. You're in the process of taking care of this.
Okay.
So typically, we don't require, we can just recommend continuation since you've kind of done what we require in terms of starting this process. Double check with, I don't know if there's a contact information on
Yeah,
the
I think
ticket.
it is kinda,
Yeah, so if you have his contact, just let him know you're
yeah. Okay.
in this
As long as
process.
it's
I'll
within-
confirm with him on it.
Okay, cool. Appreciate it.
Okay. Your portion of this is finished. You're welcome to stay. This is so exciting.
Yeah, I gotta go.
I kind of figured.
Got Rubino's go eat. I'll see you guys.
Okay,
Thanks
well,
so
make
much,
sure you
guys.
drop some back off here on your way. All right. That concludes the first public hearing. We're going to start the second public hearing now, which is for Mr., I don't want to kill this, Maravka? Maravka? Oh, very good. Casey, I'm telling you. At 16933 Willow Lane Drive, he wants to get a variation for an accessory structure, a detached garage, variations. So I'll read this thing to you. It says, consider recommending the village board grant Casey and Sherry Maravka variations to permit a side yard setback, a reduced side yard setback, reduced distance from a principal structure, and increased height for an accessory structure, that is a detached garage, at 16933 Willow Lane Drive in the R4 Single Family Residential Zoning District. So I need a motion for us to open this hearing.
Make a motion.
Second.
Okay, motion is seconded. All those in favor of opening the hearing, so it's aye. Aye, all opposed? Mr. Maravka, before we start, oh, you already did, never mind, we did that already. Dan, it's back on you.
Okay, yeah, so this is a variance. The petitioner is looking to take down their existing garage that's kind of falling apart and getting old, and they're looking to rebuild it. Based on the petitioner's proposed plan, there's 3 variances that are required. One would be the distance from the existing home, or the existing enclosed porch that's out there. Typically, that's required to be 10 feet, as we mentioned with the last variance. And then there is also a variance from the setback of the property line, so there's typically a required 5-foot setback from the property line that he'd be reducing. And then the third variance is for a height variance to the garage that we typically require to be 18 feet maximum, and the petitioner is requesting 22 feet for the height. So a background of the property, real quick. So this is in Parkside subdivision, not too far from the last property that we were at, so a little further down 171st, and then a little bit further north. So again, it's an older subdivision, much like the last one, or the Breitbarth subdivision. This is Parkside. Most of the homes were built again in the 40s, 50s, so most either didn't have garages when originally built, or they were kind of 1.5 car garages at that time. Just based on most families had 1 car. So a lot of these were kind of constructed after the fact. There's a lot of, again, non-conforming kind of situations, especially with accessory structures out here with garages. Some get right on property lines, some somewhere in between there and the 5 feet that we require now. Our goal is always, when kind of people rebuild, is to meet that requirement, especially with accessory structures when possible, is at least give your neighbors and yourself a little bit of buffer on your property lines, so that way you can maintain not only the structure, but that it's kind of a reasonable setback from the property line that you can get through there. It can maybe have grass or landscaping or something, and then it's not just kind of gonna become a weird kind of dead zone on your property. So that's kind of the reason for that 5-foot setback. There's the existing garage, it's kind of on an angle, so the setback ranges from 7.18 feet to down to 3.75 feet right now. So the kind of closest it gets to the property line is 3.75 feet. There's been a few variances approved in Parkside, as well as just kind of some of our similar older subdivisions. So there's been quite a few of those for garage setbacks in the last 10 to 20 years. Most of these are someone replacing their garage kind of as is. It's fallen down, they want to replace it where it's at, use the foundation, use the existing concrete or base and things like that. Or they're kind of expanding upon their garage, and they just kind of want to follow the same line as the garage instead of having to like step the side of the garage in 2 feet or something like that. So none of these recent ones have kind of increased the non-conforming setback, so they have kind of allowed people going through the variation process to say, you know, I kind of just want to put it back where it's at. Usually because with these older lots, there's kind of existing situations that kind of limit where you can put it on the lot. So, but again, none of them have really increased that setback. In regards to kind of accessory structure heights, so up until 2007, the maximum accessory structure height was 15 feet. In 2007, they increased that to 18 feet, basically to allow some extra flexibility, minimize the amount of variances, allow people to get vans and kind of have larger garage doors, build a larger structure. The main concern is that kind of with detached garages and accessory structures, again, you kind of want them, they're only 5 feet away from the property line, so it's a pretty tall structure that's getting close to your neighbor's house. And for the most part, if it's a principal structure, you're required to have side yards, and your principal structure is at least let's say 8 feet, I think, is one of our least restrictive side yard requirements. So again, this is allowing these structures to get closer to the property line, but limiting their height. Kind of hoping that we're not ensuring that they kind of remain accessory to the principal structure, that they're not as tall as your house or taller than your neighbor's house, that they do kind of fit that suburban neighborhood mold, residential mold, that they're not kind of becoming these large industrial-looking type garages. The current 18-foot maximum is the largest of any suburbs around here. So Orland Park has 13 feet, Orland Hills is 13 feet. Almost everyone else is 15 feet, and that's pretty standard. Again, 15 feet for a garage most people can even fit a van. You can build them in ways, lower rough angles. So 15 feet is kind of the standard. Again, the Tinley decided 2007 that 3 extra feet, that'll give you kind of some additional room to play with if you have kind of a bigger vehicle or you need more storage or something like that.
That's ground to ridge, right, Ken?
Yes, yeah, so that's to the top of the peak of the garage. So, only one, so since 2007 and that code change, there was one garage height variance that came before the ZBA and was recommended for denial. So a height is kind of one of those things that you can meet a maximum height requirement. It's kind of hard to say that your property doesn't allow you to meet the maximum height requirement. So it came out of ZBA for that reason with a recommended denial, but there was kind of some unique circumstances around that. It was originally, that garage was approved to be 17 and a half feet, so it was gonna be under the 18. When the contractor built it, it was 19 and a half feet, and then when the village basically went to go pull their bond, it bounced and no one could ever get a hold of the contractor again. So the garage hadn't even been fully completed yet, so the contractor was just kind of gone. The resident was basically would have had to foot the bill again to kind of rebuild the garage. So the village board did kind of override the ZBA just due to those pretty unique circumstances. While they don't kind of fall into your typical standards, it was a pretty unique situation there. Just due to this situation with the contractor. So besides that one kind of unique situation, all other garages since 2007, every garage in the village has been built meeting that 18-foot maximum height requirement. So here's kind of the existing structure, the existing house. It's a pretty nice exterior on the house. An older kind of Victorian style type on the outside with the porch. The zoning is R4 zoning. It's surrounded by R4 zoning, so northwest, southeast. It's pretty much all single-family residential homes, kind of the similar Parkside subdivision, a little bit smaller lots, and homes that some are 2 stories, some are single stories, some are a little older, some are a little newer. So there's a mix of kind of ranches and 2-story homes in there. Most, again, built from kind of 1940, 1950, 1960 era. So there's 3 variation requests. Again, there's a 2-foot variation required for the detached garage to be 3 feet from the property line is what he's requesting. So reducing reducing the current setback, which is 3.75 feet, taking that down that extra 3/4 of a foot closer to the property line. There's an 8-foot variance, which I believe is actually a little bit less, based on the latest sketch he told me or showed me, but there's a variance from the distance from the principal structure, which I believe is 2 to 6 feet, somewhere in there, to allow it to be closer to the principal structure than the 10 feet that's required per zoning code. There's separate building code requirements to that if it's closer than 10 feet, basically you have to have fire-rated walls and things of that nature, so that way, if there is a fire in your garage, you have enough time to get out of the house and that it doesn't jump from one structure to the next that quickly. So that's still required, that's not part of this variance, this is just, our zoning code kind of has a similar requirement for that 10 feet separation. And then again, that third variance for the height to allow the garage to be 22 feet in height instead of 18 feet. So I can maybe let the petitioner talk a little bit more about the height requirements or their kind of reasoning behind it. But I can kind of give you the quick rundown of the variance. So attached is the drawn plan from the petitioner, which shows kind of a 22 by 26 shed there, or sorry, garage. It'd be 3 feet from the property line and somewhere between kind of 2 to 6 feet from the covered porch that's out there, which is considered part of the principal structure. And here's kind of the petitioner's drawing of the dimensions of what they're proposing to do here. So again, 26 by 22 square foot garage.
In that picture there, where is the house related in this picture right here?
It's to the bottom right, I guess. So
It's the right-hand side
the
of the
garage is on the bottom of this. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so kind of in the bottom right corner.
I have another picture, if you guys want to see, that shows a footprint of where the house and the garage are.
Are now.
Yeah, so you could see it now and where it would,
Yeah, so we can pass that around if you want.
yeah, there's two of them. Each one has both on there. It's the current, the second page shows where I'd like to put it. Which I like to keep it basically in the same footprint, keeping it 3 feet from the fence is 3.7 now. And just turning it to be able to go from an 18-foot wide garage to a 22-foot wide garage and still have the 8 feet from the house, which it currently has now.
So, and this is the kind of schematic drawing of the front of the garage and what he's proposing to do there. For the setback variances, the preference is always, again, to not kind of make things worse than they already are. If there's a non-conforming setback, we're usually amenable to allowing it kind of where it's at, but hopefully not making anything worse. And trying to get it to meet the setbacks as much as possible, so, or where possible. And we kind of get what the petitioner is trying to do here. You know, it's not really a fully two-car garage at the moment, so he's trying to get this to be a two-car garage, and a little bit longer too for storage as well to fit his van in there. But there are kind of, depending on, there's kind of multiple kind of alternative options that could be played with. One, reducing the width of the garage and as well as the length, as well as shifting the garage either back or further to the south. So a kind of minimum width of a two-car garage is 20 feet, so the 22 feet could get reduced. This first example is still showing kind of a 22-foot garage, but pushing the garage further to the east, further back on the property. There is a tree there that I believe would need to be trimmed back, but the kind of effects on the root zone. But we had our arborist kind of take a look, and there's kind of a reasonable level that you can disturb roots and that won't kill a tree, and he thought this was pretty well within that.
Can I ask another question real quick? This drawing that you, on your new garage,
Yeah.
is that what you're looking to build, just that way? 6 feet from the house?
It's 8 feet.
Okay, well, okay, it says 6 feet here, but you're saying 8 feet?
It says 8 feet on there. It just,
So we're not looking at the one that backs up or turns on an angle?
the one on the angle is where I.
No, I mean where you drive in and it's right up against your house.
Yeah, it's not gonna be right up
Okay.
against the house.
Yeah, so this is a detached garage. the, kind of our third option is you know, they're already kind of putting in the firewalls, is could you do an attached garage here? In the front, I would agree it probably doesn't look good from an architectural standpoint. I'm not sure if there's, how the interior of the lot's set up, but could you do kind of an attached garage on this? That would actually meet all the setback requirements. And it would also allow it to be built 22 feet in height. So if it's attached.
That's the third option.
Yeah, so the third option could be built up to the height of the existing structure as well. So if it's attached, that would actually, you could get the size you wanted out of it, as well as it may take some extra architectural engineering and stuff. And again, I don't know how the exact layout is within the house now, but that is at least one other option to consider. The other option is not pushing it back quite as much, but reducing the width of the garage to 20 feet. You can reduce the length as well if it's getting too close to the tree. So we know they're trying to maximize the garage, but we're also trying to kind of minimize the variances at the same time as much as possible. So either minimizing the length or the width to try and at least get the preferably it just meet the 5 yard or 5 foot side yard setback. But at the minimum, we'd want to at least keep what the existing setback is now and not reduce that further, so.
And he's
and then
now at 3 feet?
3.75.
That's what he is now?
Yeah, so he'd be making that a little bit less.
Little 9-inch little.
Close
Looking
to a
gain
foot.
7 inches, basically.
So I get about 7 inches closer, which, again, it seems small, but at a certain point, you kind of got to draw that line at one place or another. So we're looking at, is there any way to keep that existing setback at a minimum and not allow something to get worse?
Well, if he goes to 3.75, it just pushes it from 8 inches to 7 1/4 towards the house.
Well, yeah, if he shifts it, or it could be pushed back or reduced in width too. So our concern from the house is a little bit less, as long as it meets the fire code requirements. We're kind of more amendable to it getting closer to the house. Again, we're even okay if it gets attached to the house. We'd rather see that and kind of better buffer the neighbor and the side property lines. So from a staff perspective, if we had to choose one, the width from the house is kind of the better one to give into than the distance from the side property line. And then just the last variance, I kind of already explained it, the height variance. He's proposing the 22-foot high garage. Again, that requirement's been set at 18. It's kind of done village-wide. And the 22-foot garage would be quite a bit higher than even the surrounding homes. So a lot of them are kind of single-story ranches, 13 to 15 feet in height. So this is going to be actually taller than his neighbor's house by quite a bit.
That's not true. It's not taller than my neighbor's house. I've
Then-
already measured that. It's not taller than either of my neighbor's houses.
Than the,
Then the house.
Than the ranch to the
house
north?
directly north of it?
yeah,
No. No, his house is 22 feet tall.
okay.
There's no, it's not taller than his house.
Okay, well, I mean, the permits have, I believe, 17 or 18 feet for that, so that's what I was going off of. But regardless, there are homes out there that are less than that, though. Like a single-story ranch typically runs about 15 feet in height. So generally, it can be
Again,
taller than
you
most
mentioned
of
it's
them.
also a mixed subdivision.
Yeah.
Atherton's built houses way bigger than that. I built my house, the one you're looking at. I did the second floor myself. I'm a general contractor. I did all the stuff you see on that myself. And I plan on building my garage to look similar to my house and, match what my current structure is.
Sure.
To go along with what it is, not to match a structure that's, a ranch or something next to, like you're explaining it. But there's all these different houses in our subdivision with different garages that match their houses. And that's kind of what I'm looking to do.
Yeah, so our biggest issue is if this sets a pretty dangerous precedent because there's really no hardship for a height variance. You can meet the code. There's nothing physical with the property that changes this, so approving a height variance basically moves that line. It sets a precedent village-wide, and again, this was debated. It's a pretty loose requirement as it's written now at 18 feet. The goal, again, to keep these accessory structures looking like accessory structures, not the size and height of principal structures. So we get what they're trying to design here. We just like to see it within 18 feet. That can be designed to, and again, it's the loosest regulation in the area. And for almost any suburb I've never seen anyone go to 18 feet like Tinley has. And again, that was allowed for kind of people to not request variances, give them some extra flexibility. But 4 extra feet, again, would set a precedent village-wide that we think would be pretty negative, so, on the height variance. So overall, we'd like to see at least try and rework this to get a better setback from the property line. At least keeping 2 feet between the principal structure unless he wants to attach it. And then the maximum height of the structure being 18 feet. So trying to work and get closer to that 5 feet on the side lot line. We understand there might, there's still probably going to be a variance somewhere in here. We'd like that to be from the principal structure and not from the side property line. So I think that's it for our staff report.
Okay, any questions for Dan before we move on? No? Alrighty then. Casey, would you like to get up and address? Sure. Okay.
I appreciate your guys' time. I'm not asking for, much more than what my structure currently holds now. I'm at 3.7 on the one side, and I'm already at 8 feet from my house. So by turning the garage, even though I'm increasing the width, I'll be at 3 feet, which gains me 7 inches on one side, and I'm still 8 feet from my house, which it currently is. Again, I'm looking to match what my house is and the caliber of the house it is. So when I eventually, if I ever sell my house, I've been here 20 years. I've lived here in Tinley my whole life. And I've watched all these houses go up. I built my house before Atherton built all their houses. So if I would have waited, I might have stole a couple of their ideas because they built a lot of really nice looking houses. But again, I'm not looking to do much more than what I have, and if I could, I would build a 24 by 30 garage, which is the maximum allowable garage in Tinley Park. Unfortunately, my property isn't big enough to hold that. So this is probably the biggest I could go without it looking wrong on the property. And that's basically what I'm trying to do. I have a van that's 10 foot, that's why I was looking to get an 11-foot door. It's a Ram ProMaster, I want to be able to put it in there. If I can't get a variation for that, I understand. Like you're saying, you're setting a new precedent by doing something like that. That I get. The setbacks, I don't really think I'm setting any precedents for anybody.
With the setbacks.
The setback
Yeah.
on the side, yeah. The house to the south of me is 2 feet from the fence. The house to the north of me is 2 feet from the fence. I'm looking to be 3 feet from the fence. As far as how far back it is from his house next to me, his house is further in front of mine. I'm gonna be 20-plus feet from his house. I'm nowhere close to it. I'm 8 feet from mine. So I don't see a hindering problem on being able to access, the side of my garage by going 7 inches over. So, other than that, that's all I got on that one. I appreciate your time.
The 22-foot height, is that for aesthetics only?
No, I want to be able to fit my van in there. I got to put an 11-foot door on the garage to be able to do that. So
Well, you can still put an 11-foot door on the garage and keep the roof line at 18 feet.
I would have to keep the roof down lower, yeah.
Yeah.
So the pitch on the roof would get lower.
That's my big concern, is
Yeah, I
going
don't-
22 feet is just too high for me.
I understand. I understand. Dave, the house that he's talking about, the 19-foot-5, is on the street behind me. So if I could even go a little bit higher, so I could get in there and make the roof, you know. If you look at the sidewalls and you look at the picture that shows there, my roof pitch isn't that great. So if I lower the sidewalls down a little bit, then my roof pitch gets lower, and it's gonna look not right. I want it aesthetically to also look right, not just because I threw it up like that. The
Well-
man is actually in the picture right there, off to the side.
I mean, just my opinion, if you want a 22-foot roof, attach it to the back of the house.
I get that. I get that.
That's just my opinion.
And I really don't want to do a detached or an attached, because there is no attached in my subdivision. I want to keep it detached just like all the other ones in there. So if that's the case, I'm fine with not doing the 22 feet. I won't go for the variation on that. I still want to keep it a detached garage and keep it like the rest of the houses around me.
All right?
When did you build your house?
I did the addition in 2003.
And did you build the garage also?
No, I never took the
That was
garage down.
existing?
At the time, I couldn't afford to do both. So otherwise, I would have done both at the same time.
Are you planning on putting the firewall that Dan
Oh,
recommended?
yeah. Yeah, because it's under 10 feet, so it needs a firewall. Where that garage right there doesn't have a firewall, and it's 8 feet away. So the new one will have the firewall.
Okay. Any other questions for Casey? No? Okay, you can have a seat if you
Thank you.
want. Any other questions for anybody here before we close the hearing and discuss? Okay, let's have a motion to close.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor of closing the hearing, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. All right, guys, let's talk about this. Where we stand right now is that you're ready to go back down to 18 feet for your roof line in your garage, is that right? 18 feet height, okay.
Or if you'd allow me to go to the 19.5 that the person behind me is.
His garage is 19.5?
Yeah, that's the one that built it, and then the contractor bailed on him halfway through the job, yeah. That's not actually for us to be able to do.
Okay.
You know, we have rules we have to follow, and unfortunately, that's one of them. I like the job you did in the house, I'm sure the garage is gonna be really good looking too, but we have to follow procedure and protocol. I personally, and you guys can chime in on this, I personally have no real problem with the 7-inch difference in the
Well, it's 9 inch, 3/4
9
foot is
inches.
9 inches.
Okay, 9 inch, with the 9 inch
No, I don't have a
difference.
problem with that
I
either.
don't have a problem with that. And
Yeah.
quite truthfully, if you're gonna put the firewall in as you get closer to the house or the porch, whatever, I don't know that that's as big a concern. Thing is, a couple of us were firemen back in the day, and we'd roll out on garage fires that by the time we get up to the scene, the garage was so close to the house, now it's a house fire. And so, but they didn't have firewalls or anything.
Next door neighbor's a fireman, or Chapman.
Yeah, so, I mean, you know, this is a bunch of old guys looking at this going, but if you're gonna put the firewall and stuff in, I personally don't know that wouldn't be sufficient. So what about you, Bob?
I have no problem with the first variation request. The second variation request, the height was what concerned me.
Okay.
22 foot, I thought was a little too high.
Jimmy?
That's my opinion exactly.
Okay.
I'm right there also.
Donnie?
I'm okay with everything but the height. The 22 gives me a lot of concern.
Okay. Dan, do you guys, anybody have anything to add before we vote on this?
Would you have a problem with the 19.5?
Well,
Like I
again, we
said,
can't-
that's not for us. That was an after the fact, thing. I think at this point, I have to stay myself with the 18 foot.
Yeah.
I really do.
agree.
You're gonna
Or
pick
you'd
one.
have to start over and ask for a 19.5 again, so I mean,
I get you.
Yeah,
And we can't really amend it right
Right.
now.
no.
Well, and
Can we?
I'll just throw my 2 cents in for the setback variances. Keeping it at 3.75 helps from an enforcement standpoint on this, is at what point, again, do you draw that line? You know, the previous standards have been, if you're rebuilding it, you gotta keep the same setback. So this starts to reduce, take that away. So we would like to, you can sit there and go, well, it's only 7 inches. Well, can you make 7 inches up in the width, or I'm moving it 7 inches? We'll take a 7.25 foot setback from the house and keep that 3.75 setback from the property line. So
Can you do that?
we'd like 5 feet, but we'd at least want to maintain that 3.75.
Can you
so
move
that
the
way we
garage
don't
over
set
9
that
inches?
You
precedent.
can, but you gotta look at the property line and look at how it's laid out on there. The property's on a trapezoid. There's a maple tree that's 5 foot in diameter in my backyard. The further over I push it, the closer it gets me to the tree. Further back I push it, the closer it gets me to the tree, because the property's on an angle. So I'm
Dan.
trying to eliminate getting any closer to my tree now than I am. I'm at 26 feet. With the way the garage is built, I'll be at 16 feet. Move the garage over, now I'm at 15 feet. I'm trying to eliminate getting any closer to the tree.
Well, or eliminating
Have
9
the
inches
property
from the
next
width.
to me
Could you
are
have a
2 feet from the
21?
fence. The other people are 2 feet from the fence. Mine's already 3.7, I'm only asking to go to 3.
And again, some of those have been approved through variances, basically them rebuilding their current garage and not
They
making
both
it.
had concrete done, so they built completely new, it wasn't on top of their old concrete.
Correct, which is
So
a lot of.
At that point, it should have been brought in and made to go in the code. It should have had to been 5 feet away, just like what you're saying.
Well, and we're saying they didn't make it worse than it previously was. So a lot of those were approved. If it was at 2 feet, they'd approve it at 2 feet. And that's what we're trying to maintain here too.
So 1 and 2 are good, 3 knocks down to 18 feet, good.
So Dan,
So
how do
we're
we
just saying, can you
eliminate?
find 9 inches somewhere because that is another precedent that's being set with this, is you're now allowing people to reduce existing setbacks further, so to 3 feet.
Well, but we do that with fences, we do that with everything, Dan. We go by what the neighbors have got. This neighbor, or something like this, they've got 3 feet, or this guy's only got 2 feet, and maybe there's only 2 feet down the road.
And this again too is an old neighborhood.
So I mean, we have to compare it to what's around them. And giving them 9 inches, I don't think is giving a lot.
And the
Well,
viability of building it.
it's 2 foot 9 inches, but I guess our goal is that we want these to meet the code. We get when there is existing situations, and we're willing to give to that point of, okay, there's.
Well, we do it with
existing-
fences all the time.
Well, and there's garages that meet the setback code, and we've had people reconstruct garages to meet the setback code. So we've been enforcing this, yes, there's non-conforming stuff out there, yes, there's been a few variances approved to rebuild them, but we actively try and get people to meet the current codes, to meet that 5-foot setback as much as possible. So it gets a little more difficult if you say, well, we'll just allow people to keep reducing it, because there's a 0-foot setback garage out here. That's something that we would never want to see rebuilt. So there's stuff that, yeah, it's non-conforming, but we really don't want to see it get worse than it currently is. So, just my 2 cents, but that is setting another precedent of people can start reducing their garage setbacks out here a little bit further than they have.
But only in older areas of town.
Correct,
Because
yeah.
from the
it'd
newer
be
subdivisions,
in
and that,
this
those,
area.
those lines are pretty well drawn. I mean, I live in what can be called now an older part of town, and some of these things, some of the codes might not work for me at all. Your mom's house was the same way.
But in this case, we're saying you can at least meet it. That there's multiple ways he would be able to meet a 3.75-foot setback. He could reduce the width of the garage by 9 inches and meet it. So we get when there's situations where you can't, or it gets really tight. This one seems like there's 3 or 4 different options he has to pick up 9 inches essentially and not set that precedent. So.
Option number 1 is a 5-foot setback, 22 by 26. According to what I'm reading, correct?
Say that again?
Your option number 1 Set a 22 by 26 detached further back east on the property, about our line driveway, allowing a 5-foot setback from the property line.
Yeah, so that's if you've pushed it further.
Pushes it
enough
closer
back.
to the house, though.
Yeah, and closer to the house on that one. So, but alternative 2 is the option where you could reduce it down to 20 feet or 21.25, and you'd meet that one's got it to 20, and you can actually meet the full 5-foot setback, and it doesn't push it much further east on the property. But if he does 21.25, then he at least maintains his current setback. Because otherwise, for us, it gets difficult to, there is no line drawn. So if someone wants to go to 0 feet, where does the line kind of get drawn at? If you just always point to something non-conforming and go, well, they have it, you can find an example, a lot of examples out there. And again, most of this was developed before zoning code. So our goal is just, can you kind of maintain what's there in some way?
20 foot's a standard 2-car garage, correct?
Correct.
20
Yes.
20 by 22.
20 by 20
Yeah,
is
20 by
the,
20.
yeah. Meets the legal kind of definition if you're marketing it.
Current garage is 18 and a third by 24, something like that.
So I guess I will note the standards are kind of drafted in a way that would recommend denial. So if you guys are looking to recommend approval for this, we will kind of need those amended in some way to explain. Since from staff's draft of these, it doesn't really meet a unique circumstance for the majority of these. The code can be met in a number of ways. And we do think that these would, not the setbacks, but the height especially would have looked out of place here. So,
Well, the height is off the table now, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
What if, again, where'd the 16 feet between the tree and the corner of the garage come from?
Oh, I put that on there because I laid it out on CAD so you guys could see the black line represents the property line. 16.
Oh, so that's what it would be.
That's what it would be.
Okay, and,
I'm trying, if I put it where I'm looking
and
to
who,
put it.
he talked, Dan said something about an arborist or something, talking about that was okay with the roots and,
yeah, we think it'll be okay with that tree. What he's proposing and the alternatives we proposed as well, it doesn't get into the root zone to a significant amount or too close to the actual tree. So staying 16 feet away, and then the real goal is there's a root zone that kind of goes around it, and then what's the percentage
Well,
of that?
The branches, the way they overhang, I don't want them directly over the top of the garage. If they fall in the garage. So,
well, I get that, but
yeah.
Yeah, so we're looking at saving the tree. Obviously, it's gonna probably need to be trimmed regardless
I'm
of.
gonna trim it back.
Yeah, so regardless, it'll need to be trimmed to fit what he's proposing or any of our alternatives. So we were mainly looking to make sure we don't kill the tree.
Like it's 20, that's 26, that's 26 away.
yeah.
Am I wrong?
No, that's what it
All
looks
right.
like. That's-
I personally feel that we could get through all this and get it to the village board and get you through quickly if you're willing to move it to 9 inches. If you can move the garage over 9 inches, I think we're done here. I think we're okay.
What do you mean, move it over?
Move it over
closer
and
to the
give
house?
us back the 3.75 at the fence line on the other side. So move it over 9 inches closer to the tree. I think that's,
I don't think it's gonna cut off a foot of that 16 feet.
No,
I
I mean, that
think-
is the reason why I'm here, to ask for the variance. To be able
Well,
to get
the code calls for 5 inches,
5 feet.
5 feet.
5 feet.
or 5 feet rather, so we're giving you already a foot and a quarter.
Yeah.
So I think if we stay in that 3.75 range, I don't think there'd be a problem.
I guess. I mean, again, my neighbors both to the the north and south, they both had their garages built, and they're both 2 feet away from the fence.
Yeah, well, again, we're
And I'm
just
only
going,
looking to go 7 inches, you know, and they both have built garages bigger than the one I'm building. I can't build it any bigger depth or width. They got 24-foot wide garages, I can't do that. I'm gonna, you know,
Dan, do you have a better aerial with these other properties?
I have
I'm
one.
not seeing it.
I mean, the one, you can see that, I guess the garage to the south on that one.
Lady
He could always ask the board to amend what we did to him.
I don't think we have the north one. Which the
well,
one,
again,
to-
when they have to rebuild, they won't be. That's-
well, the one to the
But
north.
those are brand new, they
Yeah,
just built them.
the one to the north has a variance, I know, and that one is down to 2 feet, but was rebuilt as it was, so it was 2 feet, and they granted them a variance.
The one with the pool?
The one with the pool.
Okay, and he's at 3, and his old garage is at 3.75 now?
Correct. But that, the house to the north had an existing garage that was 2 feet, so they let them rebuild it exactly the same footprint was what the variance
Well, shame
was
on them.
approved for. Well, the same situation is what's here, is they, basically and kind of what's been held is what's existing, we'll let you rebuild it where it's at. So that way you're not redigging foundations and stuff like that. Basically, maintain what you have, don't make it worse. So that's kind of what they approved on that
Have
one.
new foundations.
But again, there's setbacks that are less than 2 feet, so at a certain point, you can't just go, well, 3's okay, because other people have 2, and
And what he's saying is.
5's,
Once they pulled the foundation out, they should have automatically had to go to 5 feet.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
And he's.
We just went,
They didn't put it on top of the original concrete. They all removed their concrete that was cracked and put new concrete in. Those are, you know, garages from the 60s and the 50s.
yeah, nobody rebuilds on the old concrete.
No.
yeah, and that's not what I'm saying, they've
So they
let
should-
them
they
pour
should
new
have
concrete.
had- They all should have had to have moved over to the 5 foot and met with the code, and both of those yards are square and bigger. Mine's on a trapezoid, because I'm on the turn.
Yeah, and that's,
And
that's
I
something
agree,
I'm
they,
looking at right now.
all of those should have been kept at 5, I 100% agree, but at a certain point, you can't really go back and change those. The one thing that has been maintained is that you can rebuild it basically to the current
I'm
current
not
9.
asking for anything more.
No,
I'm asking for less than what they had.
when was this other garage built, the one with the 2-foot?
2011, I think,
And how long have we had the 5-foot?
for a long time, yeah.
Okay,
But the
been
approval of
forever.
that was the
No.
existing one's 2 feet, will let you keep your existing 2 feet.
yeah,
And the other one, there's
and they
ones-
shouldn't have.
There's ones that have been 4.1. I would agree. I think everyone should stick to the 5 feet unless you absolutely can't. Unless you can absolutely show there's no way you can fit a reasonable 2-car garage on the lot.
You know,
I
the
think,
part of that is I understand with all the new construction, the lots are bigger. And this is an old subdivision, our lots are smaller. It's a little harder to sit by these new rules that they have for, you know, the newer subdivisions.
but at a certain point, there comes a limit of what you can fit on the lot in
Well,
terms of
the limit-
size. And
Today, the limit's gonna be me, is what you're saying, because you allowed it for both my neighbors.
Okay.
Now today, you're saying that I'm gonna be the line.
But we're not looking at the distance, because what has been maintained is that if you have something non-conforming, that's what you can keep.
I understand.
So it hasn't really drawn the specific
Well,
line.
I'm good-
This
I'm
would
good.
change.
You know what?
I'm good with what he's asking.
Yeah,
Except for the height.
This guy's on a trapezoid lot. I lived on a trap lot. We couldn't do anything with it without disturbing this or disturbing that. 9 inches, I'm just not willing to sit here and fight about it. I really think that if you can stay within the 18 feet
I appreciate it.
and you
If
build
the-
a firewall and you build a good firewall, so we're not taking the house into account, and as long as police and fire fire has no objection to it, why, I think we should go to a roll call and see what we get.
So we're gonna read the motion first?
You need to read the motion, or somebody needs to read the motion.
Well, so we'll need revised, we kind of need amended standards then that would go to the board, because this pretty much recommends denial And you could take off the height ones, because those are kind of the worst ones, but we would need to say, how does this not allow the reasonable return, as well as what is unique about this property? So I guess I don't need it fully written out, but if you guys could at least give me a summary of how you want to answer those ones.
Well, the property in question can't use a reasonable return. I think if he's gonna put this garage up, he's gonna put the way he's talking about. I think aesthetically, it would help produce a reasonable return. I think if it's put too close to the tree, we take a chance on killing that tree, and that tree is probably older than every one of us in the room here, which to me makes a difference. I'm not a tree hugger or anything, but it makes a difference to me.
I like trees.
I like trees
Save-
too.
Save the trees.
So, I know it doesn't appear to be in harmony with the purpose and intent of the code and that, but then again, too, we're in a village that's so diverse as far as properties go. I think as try as we might to standardize things and streamline things, I think there's going to be situations, and this is one,
That's why we're here.
and that's why we're sitting here. Exactly right, Bob.
I have a question.
Sure.
You still have that trailer home or whatever, the
The camper?
camper trailer or whatever? Is that encroaching on the neighbors? Is your driveway encroaching on the neighbor's property?
It does, right at the very corner, I laid it out, there's maybe 8 foot on, not on their property, but it's a foot into, the setback.
It looks like on the survey, it looks like it's, I don't know
Yeah,
by how
I
many inches.
think
but-
from the survey, it goes into their neighbor's property a little bit. And when that driveway gets replaced, it is required to be a foot from the property line.
Unless there's an easement granted.
No, the 1 foot standard, it's regardless of the easement, and that's a building code requirement.
Okay.
Which when because I'm turning the garage, I'm gonna turn the driveway with it, so that'll disappear. 'Cause
Oh,
it's
okay.
not gonna go straight on, it's not gonna be a weird straight driveway anymore, it's actually gonna turn into the garage. So that'll follow the line the way it's supposed to.
That should help.
Yeah, so when that's replaced, it'll be replaced with the 1 foot setback from the
So
property.
what do you want to do about the standards?
I guess I kinda got your example on the first one written down, or for the unique circumstances, though, I guess is the.
I can support the 3.75.
Okay, the third one, we don't have to do anything with,
Third
it's
one,
not gonna be a
sorry.
tallest structure.
Doesn't hurt.
Yeah, that it would,
All your
So
street-
what do you want, let's look at the second one if you want, and see what we do there.
It's coming so-
well, the third one, yeah, so the third one I think I got, and
Okay.
we said that it at least blends in with the existing neighborhood setbacks, and when you take out the height out of that, it should meet, so it's just kind of the unique circumstances question.
It is every bit of that. Okay,
They let them do that, then
so are you up for a motion then, Dan? You ready for that?
Yeah, so you would remove,
We remove the 22-foot?
yeah, you'd remove
Height
the third
request.
variance.
You want to draft it in a positive manner? Is that what you're asking?
No, I believe
Let's not
it,
read it.
I believe it is, so it's written in the.
Oh, I
the
see.
Recommended motions drafted it in the affirmative, so you just, at number 3, you won't
You
read,
just don't read.
so it'll just be the
Oh,
It
first
is
two.
18 feet.
So, have you got it up, Don?
Yeah.
Okay,
You want me to read?
go right ahead.
I move to recommend that the village board grant the following variation to the petitioner Casey and Sherry Rofka? Rofka at 16933 Willow Lane Drive in the R4 Single Family Residential Zoning District, consistent with the list of submitted plans as attached herein, and adopt the findings of fact as proposed by village staff and as may be amended by the zoning board of appeals at this meeting. Number one, a 2-foot variation from section 3-1 accessory structures and uses of the zoning ordinance to permit a detached garage to be set back 3 feet from the side lot line where a minimum of 5-foot setback is required. Number two, an 8-foot variation from section 3.1 accessory structures and uses of the zoning ordinance to permit a detached garage to be located within 2 feet of the existing principal structure where a 10-foot minimum setback is required, or the structure must comply with the principal structure setbacks. Number three, a no variance,
Skip
Okay,
that one.
yeah, you could
a
just.
no variance to the section 3-1 accessory structures to permit a detached garage to be 18 feet in height, period. With the following conditions. Is that okay, Dan?
Yeah, we'll just strike that number 3 one.
Strike
So
number
it-
3
it-
from my
yeah,
motion
Per your guys' agreement, it just won't, that won't go to the
with the,
board.
with the petitioner. With the following condition, the accessory structure must be maintained, the proposed setbacks and size as presented with the variation and may not be moved or expanded upon. B, no utilities, water, sewer, gas, cable, etc., other than electric are permitted in an accessory structure. And C, the accessory structure shall not be used for any business activity or living space.
Now, do we need to add in about the firewall, or is that already etched in stone?
That's already in there, it's a building code requirement, so that'll be.
So I don't have to
caught.
say that, okay.
Correct, yeah,
Okay.
that'll be caught in our building plan.
That was my concern.
Before we take a vote on this, can I ask one question?
Well, let's get a second on it, now we'll ask it.
Okay.
Okay, second.
Okay, seconded by Bob, okay, now what's your
Okay.
question?
Well, the second variance is talking about a 2-foot located
sir.
within 2 feet of the existing structure, and that isn't what it's gonna be.
Yeah, so it
Are we
sounds
just
like.
allowing it to?
It sounds like from his revised plan, it was gonna be 8 feet, right? 8 feet from the,
From the house?
yeah.
Yes.
Is there still an enclosed porch or patio back there?
It's not closed, there's a roof.
Okay, well, so is it the distance from that?
No, it's the distance from the house.
Okay, so it's the roof that it's gotta be, so I think that's where the.
Okay, so that's where the
feet's
2
coming
feet
from.
comes
Okay.
in.
So
Yeah.
it's,
Okay.
it's actually 8 feet from the house, I
Which
believe.
is actually, the way it's set back, it'll be 2 feet.
But since that's attached to the house, that's considered part of the principal structure. So that's the distance it needs to be from. So I believe as it's drafted, it still works.
Do we need to make clarification? 8 feet from the house, 2 feet from the,
No, it's, because it's
Closed
from the
porch?
principal structure, I believe,
Okay.
on here, which is
so we're good?
from that roof line. So yeah, I think we're good as you
Okay.
read it.
Anything else before we vote? Ms. Barbara?
Paschek,
Yes?
Bettenhausen,
Yes?
Gaskell,
Yes.
Chairman Suppasi.
Yes. All right, after all that, it passed. Now, you still have to get through the village board. You'll be going there because it was in fact a unanimous motion or unanimous vote. You will be read and approved in the same night. What night is that gonna be, Dan?
21st as
The
well. So
21st
May
of May. You should show up at the village board. They may have questions for you, especially with the amendments that we've enclosed. So be prepared to speak if you have to. I'm not gonna say you are, but just in case.
So shared, right?
Yeah, so
Yes, right here.
typically, they don't have questions. Sometimes they might have an additional clarification or something they need, they'll ask. Otherwise, we just recommend, it's in this room, 7 o'clock. We just recommend you at least come.
7:30, I think. I think it's
Is-
7:30.
Is it?
Yeah.
7:30. We'll send you the agenda and I'll let you know when it is. And then you'll get the final answer there. So. And then we'll send you the ordinance that's approved afterwards. So.
Well, thank you very much for your time, guys.
That's all right. Take care. Do a nice job on it now.
Very well.
Don't hit the roof with that truck. All right, so we're up to the good of the order. Does anybody have anything that they need to add in for us tonight?
So I have, the downtown plaza's kind of started, they've started on the road work and the utility work for that downtown Harmony Plaza. Staff kind of went out, the paver colors and types and designs have been selected for that road that's gonna be used as kind of the plaza road, so it'll be
Right,
shut
the way
down.
in,
And
yeah.
instead of being in a parking lot now, you'll have the plaza and they can spill out onto the street, when it's closed down, so it'll all be pavers over there. Kind
So
of
we'll still be
promote-
closing North Street then?
Correct, yeah. And that'll be pavers and kind of used as an extension of the plaza if they're doing big concerts and stuff,
Right.
so. And it can even spill over into the parking lot if it's a good one.
The crowds are getting bigger, so.
Yeah, they've
Let's
got
go.
some good acts in store this year, just
That
like
sounds
last
good.
year, I thought they mixed it up pretty well. So our marketing department's been working pretty hard on that. We do have a proactive property maintenance program that kind of went into effect, or got approved, just to kind of more actively look at residential properties and commercial properties and make sure they're just maintained at a level, whether it's potholes, grass, peeling paint, just kind of those basic things to make sure all our property values are maintained. We also are contracting with a company that'll kind of track contact information for foreclosure properties. So that way, if you have a foreclosure next to you, no one likes it, but at least we'll be able to track and maintain who owns it, who's responsible for the maintenance, and we can more kind of actively go after them, or we can go, instead of having waiting periods, we can just go kind of cut the grass if it gets too long, or do what we need to on the property to keep it up to a basic level. So they're doing some proactive steps on property maintenance. The corner fence regulations that you guys reviewed back in March, then went to Plan Commission for a public hearing, and then Village Board, so that got approved. So that steps those corner fences up from 4 feet to 5 feet. They still have to be open design, but hopefully that'll take care of make a couple residents a little happier out here. It's already been used, actually, for someone that was doing a new pool and a fence. They were able to then come out a little bit further and not have to come for a variance, so, and not have to set it all the way back to the house to get the height. And then we have some cellular changes coming up that went to Plan Commission. They're going to Village Board, so it involves new cellular towers, which there's not quite as many of, but a lot of the small cell stuff's coming. The state's kind of preempted a lot of local authority on that, so we basically have to allow them on our utility poles. But we can set some kind of design standards to make sure they stay in check. Occasionally, some of those guys, some of the cell tower stuff could come before you guys, so just want to let you know we're revise some of that stuff. I think that's it.
Okay. Barbara, do you have anything? Anything you want to say? You're the closest thing we have to public right here,
Everybody
so.
did their SEI
Yep.
Yes, I did.
finally.
What time's the pizza coming?
For Laura and I, it's a yearly ritual.
What time's the pizza coming?
Oh,
12:30 staying.
yeah.
All right, well, seeing there's nothing else going on, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, we got moved and seconded. I think that means we're ready to go home, so all in favor